Are Americans too cynical for amateur sports? Are we just too beaten down by the world to appreciate the spirit of competition? Does it always have to be driven by money? Or is there something else that's the problem with the dropping viewership for the Olympic Games? I think it's something we should dive into. So here we go. First up, in order to go forward, we have to go backwards. We have to acknowledge that this has been happening for quite some time. The medals for the games are always fun to watch handed out, but when it came to the Beijing Olympics, following a disastrous Olympics a year before in Tokyo, we saw a steady decline in people's interest in the Olympics. The Beijing Olympics drew their lowest U.S. ratings ever. And that's impressive considering what had happened just a year before in Tokyo. The numbers just keep falling, and I'm not sure it's just because of time zones, because that's always going to be the excuse. Now, this is an NPR article, so I don't put a lot of faith in it, other than I know that the numbers and the information, at least as far as the facts and figures are accurate, which is unusual to find at NPR. But over here at Axios, I feel a little more confident that outside of the narrative they craft around the facts and information they provide, they're actually giving us something noteworthy, like the performance of the opening ceremonies. Well, in a rain-soaked event, this one drew nearly 29 million. And that's a pretty significant audience when you look at all the different ways that people can get it now, including on streaming, which is the whole point of this for NBC, NBCU, and Peacock. They needed to get this digital, and they needed to get it, well, now. What's really funny is that over across the street at Warner Brothers Discovery, they're delivering the Olympic coverage to about 80% of Europe right now. They're watching it on Max, which is wild considering just how NBC basically had a head start in this area and we're going to be covering this across the board. But there's an actual reason for that behind who owns what rights where, so we can't really be too critical. But what we can point out is that the U.S. just plain isn't interested in the games. They talk in depth about this being the highest viewership for an opening ceremony since the 2012 games. And that, well, they've been depressed for a while. No kidding, since, well, what would have been the 2020 games moving forward. The Tokyo Games in 2021, which were supposed to be in 2020, drew just 17.9 million viewers for the opening ceremony, a 33-year low. And the Beijing Winter Olympics the following year saw record viewership declines as well. Again, pointing towards empty seats where people should have been sitting. But because of some overzealous enforcement of things, well, they just weren't. Now, if you look at this particular event, the opening ceremony for Friday, it was the most watched live event ever on NBCU's streaming service, Peacock. Well, no kidding. I mean, you could have actually, up to that point, viewed maybe a ping pong match that might have been the most watched thing on Peacock. I kid, of course, because I know for sure it's Yellowstone. But this is just something that, well, live, you really wouldn't have a lot of competition for. 28.6 million viewers watched across NBC and Peacock. At least that's according to data from Nielsen and Adobe Analytics. Another 666,000 watched on Telemundo. And that total is up, from 26.5 million people who watched the Rio Games 8 years prior in 2016. Again, not a huge gain and maybe just an opportunity to see it in a different way. They also aren't direct comparatives because I don't believe that you started seeing the out-of-household viewership numbers until very recently. We'll get to that in a moment. But NBC is under an enormous amount of pressure to deliver here because they've had a successive number of games that have made them no money on a giant contract that I think was over $7 billion, if I'm correct. They basically are, yep, I was correct, $7.65 billion to renew the media rights through 2032. Executives have said that they have spent more than $1.2 billion in advertising for these games. That's crazy. and that the opening ceremony generated 320% greater search volume than the Tokyo Games. Well, I still don't know what that means. I do know that the search volume probably was helped by the incredible controversy that was generated by some, well, quite obvious insults to various people and things. So we'll have to see how this wraps up on August 11th, but I don't think it's going to do as well as they would like. And even if it does do as poorly as we think, especially here in the US, which we're about to take a look at, they won't be able to admit it. Not outright. So we have to go looking for our own numbers. Unfortunately for us, Gallup did some polling on this, indicating that basically Paris has the low interest record. Low interest from 35% of U.S. adults. The most popular sport surprises no one in the summer. It is 42% of Olympic fans choosing gymnastics. Now, I would imagine basketball's up there as well, but we'll soon see. 35% of U.S. adults intend to watch a great deal or a fair amount of the games. That's all. So the 2024 interest is significantly down on the 48% of U.S. adults who intended to watch the 2016 Olympics. That's not a good number. 39% of women are definitely going to watch a great deal or fair amount, which is more than 32% of men. So men are opting out now. And the next most popular sport, next to, of course, women's gymnastics, looks like it's men's track and field. Again, quite surprised. Would have expected basketball. But interest in Paris, for context, for 2024 is the lowest level Gallup has recorded since 2000. So you can't even point at, well, the global crisis we went through in 2019 and 2020. Let's try that again. For context, interest in Paris 2024 is at the lowest level since Gallup started measuring in 2000. Interestingly enough, they didn't even bother to measure because of what happened in 2019 and 2020. There are just more adults that are seemingly uninterested in the games, according to the article and to the data. Women's gymnastics, while really important to people, is driven primarily by one person, Simone Biles. And if she has a similar performance to her last outing, then we may have trouble once again. But as you can see, here are the numbers. A great deal or fair amount of Olympics is in the green, and the adults who don't plan to watch much if at all, is in yellow. And you can see these numbers as we continue to go from 2000 all the way to this year. 35%, a staggering drop-off, staggering number, with 30% of people no longer interested. A 9% jump from 2016, the last measured summer, I believe, giving you a pretty good idea of what people are genuinely not interested in. Overall, Americans may just be done with the Olympics, and there's nothing wrong with that. It may not be the level of competition. It may not even be the way that we seem to not be able to tell the differences between just basic biological things. It could be that people are just so burned out on this push of globalism that they're absolutely done. And I would suggest that's more likely the actual problem. I know that the people that I talk to are genuinely disinterested in the idea of putting everybody together on the world stage all the time, which has been shoved down our throat for the last 2 decades. It's led to all kinds of geopolitical issues and struggles from country to country. No longer are cultures integrated into the various societies where the people show up. The previous work that was done culturally at the Olympics seems to have been abandoned, and the expectation that you will just accept things for what they are have expanded across the world. and to very poor results. Perhaps we should just leave it to the great experiments like the Olympics to try out these multicultural ideas before shoving them across the rest of the globe. I think we'll find that things will be a lot smoother if we were to employ that practice. But that's enough pontificating from me. I ask you simply, what do you think? Do you think the Olympics are no longer favorable for a variety of reasons? Can you point out a specific reason why nobody's watching? And answer me this question: why aren't you? Let me know those thoughts down in the comments section below. And while you're down there, please hit the like button and share this out there. Also, double check that you're still subscribed. I'm continuing to lose subscribers as much as I gain, and I know that's because YouTube is playing silly buggers with them all over again. I would really appreciate your support, considering we're so very close to 25K, and I seem to have been stalled because I have the audacity to tell the truth. On that note, be sure to take care of yourself, take care of others, and until next time, see ya.